Welcome to SLAKR Moto Radio with Brad and Addison. Based out of the Pacific Northwest, we're talking motorcycles and the motorcycle community, and we're excited to have this hour with you. Here we go. Welcome back, Slackers. Brad, how the heck are you?
I am doing good. Coming back from a little bit of vacation and into the new year. I can't complain too much, really. How's Addison doing?
Oh, I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back as well. I think it's it's a new year. We're kind of a new year, new game. We're going to change when we release these. We're going to try some new things. I think this is going to be a big year for us. In fact, that's kind of our topic. It's not necessarily a big year for us, but what we expect out of 2020 and what our predictions will be. I said 2020, but it is 2021. Everybody's going to be pissed that I just said 2020.
I can't believe you.
No. After everything that happened last year, I can't even get over it. But I'm excited. It's new year, new us. Well, same us, just new plans.
Well, if you make any resolutions, you could be a new you.
That I guess every day you're a new you, right?
Yeah. Start every day fresh. But I digress. So, what did you work on over the last couple of weeks? Over the last week or so? Any projects? Anything going on with the Gladiator build? What's going on?
Yeah, over the last little while, I ended up working on a few things. Got a little bit of work on the Gladiator. Actually went back to the old JT1, the little 60cc Yamaha mini bike. Spent some time on that. Yeah, finally got the frame. I kind of had to re-blast it and prep it, and then actually got some paint on the frame.
Nice.
Got that all done. Kind of got sick of seeing it. I had it all wrapped nicely, but there was obviously still a little, I don't know. It didn't show. There was no visible rust. I just didn't trust it, so started over again because that's how I am. I know my brain lets the worst creep in, so had to re-clean it and re-prep it so that I could paint it. Couldn't just paint it as it sat. Got that done. Got some work done on the. Got some orders placed for the Gladiators. Probably the best way to describe where I'm at with that. Did a little bit of work on metal shaping, but getting the electronics set up, a new regulator rectifier and a new stator, and then also getting everything prepped. Got the order set up, but I have to place it for exhaust pipes. Going to do my own pipes, so going through Cone Engineering's got a pretty good option for piece part items. You can weld together and kind of create the pipe from that in the right diameter, already mandrel bent, real nice. Don't have really the means to bend the pipe I want, so I'll buy the different pieces, cut them, and weld them where I need to make the pipe I want.
Nice.
And it's been good prep for that. Kind of everything's been going back to normal. Had to wait till after some Christmas spending to drop a little cash on that and get that all ordered. So things should start arriving, but it seems everything's a little slower than it used to be.
Yeah. So what size exhaust are you going to be running out the back?
So I'll go 1.5 to 1.8 825 or 875.
Okay, and I said out the back, but what is or do you even want to disclose how you're going to route that? I think that's pretty critical as far as the aesthetics are concerned.
Yeah, initial plan is to go so it'll be two into one. It'll collect into one under the engine and then out to the muffler. I'm still I'm between a few mufflers, so I haven't quite figured out what I want to do between sound and visual. The muffler's kind of a big choice, so we'll see.
Okay, interesting. So you decided to go into a single exit exhaust.
Yeah, 2 into 1 sounds great.
Okay. I'm just curious.
That's a sound choice, and likely it'll give, a little more power, but again, we're talking a GL500, so I don't think that matters, quite frankly. It's not.
Well, it's going to give you low end, so I think it depends on how you look at it, right?
Sure.
Because if you want to open it up for horsepower, you'd have it opened up. But that doesn't always mean the best results for low end torque and just setting off the line and such.
Sure. Yeah. But it does need to be I guess planned, not necessarily designed, but planned to work with the engine characteristics and those GLCX. The 500 Twisted Twin isn't really a high revving engine. I mean, it's higher revving than a handful of V twins, but it's not like, it's not a 4-cylinder sport bike. So I don't need the wide open exhaust horsepower at the top end of the rev range. I'd prefer a little low end grunt.
Sure, sure. No, I'm looking forward to seeing how you do that. I know it'll be nice.
It should be, should be fun. Kind of got some things rolling on that, but that's still a work in progress still. But got some of the pending tasks that needed to be done quickly in the garage that took way too long to do. Got those done, shelved, out of the way. I guess, you asked kind of what else. We've got a new studio here in the shop.
Nice.
Got everything cleaned up and moved, and a new bench, kind of a nice new seat in the shop for the podcast here. So can start having guests and doing a lot more around the bikes down in the shop. So that'll be really cool. Kind of spent some time getting that prepped and ready, as well as cleaning up and creating kind of the machining center side, organizing the garage. A lot of my time spent out there over the, I guess we'll call it the break, was organizing and setting up the shop in a way that it should be significantly more usable.
Well, I figured you had enough bikes that you'd just have people sit on a bike and do the podcast that way, but you decided to buy a bench. Okay. No, that did look nice. I haven't been over, you know how you are with your COVID stuff. So I just, I saw some pictures. Looked good, though. Looked real nice.
Yeah, it's just a nice, simple, commercial grade pleather bench. It's nothing special, but, with all the COVID going on, number of businesses are going out of business, unfortunately. So I kind of took advantage of one of those and grabbed a bench from their showroom.
No, it looked real good. Yeah, and I've still got that Jeep bench seat. If you ever need more, so we got that going.
You'll have to bring that by.
I know. So for the last couple of weeks, for me, not near as much motorcycle progress. I guess I did get the head started cleaning that up, cleaned up the valves. I got to do the grind work on just seating the valves and get that together, replace the valve stem steels as well. So I'm looking forward to finish that up. I know we've got a deadline kind of set, maybe for going out and riding with the guys on some out in, what is it, northern Central Oregon. So plan on trying to get that finished up. But the big news for me, I guess, was getting some power out to my 20 by 40 carport. So I don't have lights quite yet, but I do have a 100 amp panel out there now that's all ready to be plumbed into and start getting some stuff going so I can actually see out there. This time of the year, it just sucks. It gets dark so quick. So that was pretty exciting. So that was worth the Saturday getting it in.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I think setting up your carport for some work is the right choice, man. You got to get that bike done.
Yeah, well, I've got a little room that I can work on the bike, but it'd be a lot nicer if I had more than one outlet in all of this. I think I've got about 1,000 square feet that has one outlet. So that's including the room off the back. So it'd be nice to have something a little bit better, right? So I'm working towards it. So over the next couple of weekends, I'll keep on adding to it, getting it going.
Yeah, that'll be super nice when you're finished. I think you're headed in the right direction for your shop there. Now, I gotta say, I imagine you'll probably finish that this year, right?
What's that? The shop? The car?
Yeah, you think you'll get the lights plumbed, the bike fixed? Is that part of your 2021 prediction?
You could say that. Yeah, definitely the bike's going to get done. I'll get it back together, see if there's anything else going on that I just didn't know when I pulled it apart. But I'm pretty positive that what I've taken care of was the issue. So I'll have a little bit of a break in with a new cam, but nothing too bad. And definitely I'm going to have lights and some outlets. Now, I don't know. I should have a lot of it done throughout the year. Yeah, definitely. That'll be a prediction for me as far as home projects are concerned. I mean, do you have a prediction for yourself, or should I guess that on yours?
By the end of this year, we'll have a couple of new toys floating in the shop. The Gladiator and the JT1 will both be done.
Okay.
Now, the JT1's easier. I mean, that's pretty simple. It's more or less a restoration of sorts. It's not as much custom work, so that'll be easy. Just a matter of doing it. But I got to get the Gladiator off the bench before I have room to put all that back together. And that one's pretty much prepped and lined up on shelves, ready to just be assembled. So
Now, can I assume, is there going to be a new track bike this year?
yeah, I wish. I don't know that there's going to be a new one just due to everything going on and the expense of having that new track bike. I will say, this is a prediction discussion we're having, but one of the goals I've got is to get out to three track days this year. So
Oh, that's a pretty good aspiration.
I know of two pretty clearly that are pretty darn likely going to happen. The third, I may just roll into actually going to Moto America, not necessarily running the track, but watching others do it.
Sure.
As long as that opens up, right? We still have the Northwest is still pretty shut down out here, so that's like one of two Moto America venues that isn't selling tickets yet because they're not sure they will be able to.
Yeah.
But I have to assume by I think that's June. I have to assume by the end of June that will be available, hopefully, and that'll be the third one there. But we'll see. So there'll be more track time. It'll likely be on the Street Triple. I don't know that I'll have another or a different bike by then.
I'm looking forward to seeing what you end up doing there. I know that the more track days that you go to, the more likely that I could predict that you will be buying a new motorcycle. That's for sure.
Yeah, we'll see.
So I'll throw that in the predictions. I predict that Addison is going to buy a new motorcycle this year.
A new motorcycle or new to me?
It doesn't have to be brand new. New
All
motorcycle
right.
to you.
That's more reasonable.
I might even say two. I'm going to say two motorcycles.
Yeah.
If I look at last year, and if you at least maintain the same amount of purchases as you did last year, with me being so big, I think that I might actually do okay on this.
Yeah, that's probably fair. That's less than last year's total.
Yes, yes. So I'll say, but Addison's going to buy two motorcycles. But enough about us. I mean, what do you think the industry is going to do?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we'll get into it here. My big prediction, I guess we'll just lead off with the big one because why not? My big prediction for the year is I think sales and registration of motorcycles, so the motorcycle market in the U.S. and worldwide, if we're talking about it, but worldwide didn't do so differently this year anyway. But I think, I guess last year, but this year I think it's going to do well, and obviously it'll do better than 2020. I don't think there's really any doubt in that. But I think it's going to do well to the point of being notably well, significantly well. But I also, for some reason, I think that the industry is still going to cry wolf that they're not selling bikes.
Oh, that's interesting. So how do you? I mean, if they're selling bikes, how do you cry wolf and say that they're not selling bikes? I mean, that's what I'm trying to understand in your prediction.
So, yeah, and we've talked about this in other episodes, kind of generically in the past. But for years now, the market's done better year over year. Obviously, 2020 is an example where that's the exception to the rule. But prior to that, has been doing better and better. But it just never caught up to the pre-2010 peak that the industry was at. So the industry's down. The industry's down. That's all we've really heard. It hasn't been quite as loud as it was right after 2010, obviously. But that's kind of what we continued to hear. But in reality, it was moving in the right direction. It just never hit the peak of 2010. So I foresee that we will have a year-over-year change, obviously, from 2020. That's an obvious and easy prediction as far as I'm concerned. But I think it will be better than 2019's numbers, but we'll still continue to talk about how the industry is down.
Yeah, and I don't have a lot of the information for 2020. I don't have any of it. We saw a lot, and we've talked about how used bike sales were up, and that a lot of people were out purchasing motorcycles in that regard. Now, I don't know how that panned out for the entire year, but I'm actually going to kind of, I don't know, I'm really feeling like that 2021 is going to be about the same as 2020. and let me explain this a little bit. One, we've got all these people that just bought used motorcycles. I continue to see the used motorcycle market to be quite, maybe not lucrative, but busy. That we're still going to be seeing a lot of used bikes being traded hands. We're going to see some new motorcycle sales, definitely, especially as manufacturing is able to increase. But there's still a little bit of hesitation in certain areas, depending on where you look globally, that may be just coming into having the effects of COVID really play out. So I anticipate that yeah, there's going to be some sales and that it might be okay, but I think it's actually going to be about the same. You got a lot of guys that bought motorcycles, bought used bikes, bought something to get by, and there's not really an incentive to do more. Now, we additionally potentially have, as far as the political side is concerned, that there's the potential for additional stimulus. So we received one last year. We received another one at the end of the 2020, and there's talks of another one in 2021. So I mean, there's a potential that depending on the size of these, that people might have the money to go out and buy a sub $8,000 motorcycle relatively easily with uh, a low interest or a low principal loan. But I don't know how that's really going to play out. I think that that's just going to make it even more difficult to find a used motorcycle. So I don't think that we're going to be able to track how well 2021 does for motorcycle sales, and that would be my prediction.
No, shocker, but I disagree. I've seen more riders. I think, and we don't have registration data, so I'm not entirely sure where it was as well on 2020. But it would seem, based on my eye and watching the used market, that we have more used bikes sold. Based on talking to people and understanding where everyone's at least within the groups that I communicate with, we had a lot of people getting their endorsements. We had a lot of people learning to ride, maybe even sometimes without endorsement in their learning and practicing, or at least getting an interest to riding in 2020, just due to the fact that it was one of the few normal, COVID safe activities, right? Nobody would give you any guff if you went and traveled via motorcycle, at least in the US. I know there's other places that there were limits on the distance you could go and things like that. But in the US, if you were riding by motorcycle, nobody was worried about it. You had a helmet on, you were wearing a mask all the time, right? You're doing something that's more or less individual. So there was greater rider use of motorcycles, at least in 2020, than I've really seen in the past. And so I think that that's going to migrate into, as people are able to get jobs again, those that lost their jobs, as companies are beginning to get back in normal and paying again what they were, and kind of some of these upsets that happened for a lot of people. As that begins to normalize, I think those people are going to go out and maybe buy nicer used bikes or buy a new bike. Looking at the data set in 2020, a lot of the manufacturers worldwide and US took a hit for their normal sales. Some as much as 25, 28% reduction in profits for the year, if not, some that did poorly and had losses. And I think we're going to see that flip flop to where those that couldn't and wanted to are now going to be more likely to buy those bikes, whether it's new or used. But I think we're going to see more new bikes sold, and I think we're going to see the manufacturers, to your point, pick up manufacturing, but because their bikes are selling, and those people that wanted a bike couldn't get one because there was limited showroom availability because of limited manufacturing. If you want to hear a little bit about that, you can listen back to a couple episodes to our discussion with Ryan Pyle, and where he's looking for a bike but can't get one because they didn't make enough that year, and they're sold out in the area in Dubai where he's at. I think that's the case in a lot of places, and those people, now that they come available this year, are going to be buying them up.
Right. I just saying. All I'm saying is that you're not going to be able to track it very well. So I think the used market is going to be difficult to track. That's going to keep some businesses afloat potentially. They're going to be selling new bikes, but I anticipate that we're going to be at about the same plateau as far as new bike sales. I hope I'm wrong, but that's what I'm going to say. And then the used market is going to be continually strong throughout the year. So that's interesting. So we got a couple of new bikes that are coming out as well. Do you got any predictions about how those are going to do?
I mean, yeah, I guess we all have our predictions, right? I think that we're gonna see a lot of Pan Americas on the road by the end of the year.
No,
A
I
lot
mean I
might
don't
be
want to say
extreme.
that it's going to be bad, but you really think that they're gonna sell out? Do you think that's going to be that hot?
I don't know if they're gonna. I think they will sell out. Actually, I'll go as far as saying sell out because I don't think they're doing a huge volume for year one. So because they're not going to do full Sportster production volume, I think they will sell out of their year one. I think they will sell out of pre-orders as of February when they have their official online launch. I think you're going to see people putting down payments on pre-orders almost immediately. I think there is an excitement behind this bike more than I expected, quite frankly, when it first came into the market, 3-4 years ago? And people started talking and rumoring, and there were pictures and cat images and all of that. I think it is going to live up to what Harley Davidson hoped it would. I don't know that that means it's going to be, a GSA Adventure 1200 or if it's going to be, a KTM adventure bike. But for what everyone would expect from a Harley adventure bike, I think it will live up to those chops. The little videos they've shown, granted, anyone can do anything for 5 minutes on a bike, and, jump it across however many gaps in the sand dunes that they want, and it won't do any long-term damage because you're only riding it for 5 minutes. But it looks like it handled well and has the chops on the short videos they've released. I think it's going to sell out this year. That was not really my prediction, but my prediction is I think those of us that are aware of and paying attention to the bikes that we pass and that pass us throughout our days, I think we're all going to see one on the road. I think they're going to, at least in the US. I don't know that they're going to have very many sales outside of the US, and I doubt that they would, as a lot of the Harley big bikes don't necessarily. But in the US, I think it's going to be a bike that people see running around.
I mean, I think we're going to see some. I'm not doubting that. My concern is that it's priced. I'm assuming, and we don't have any final projections on this, but I'm going to assume it's about 20,000 and up, depending on how it's spec, and which seems to be on par with some of the top end motorcycles that already have, or especially adventure bikes that have already been established. And so my question is, with a limited availability, are they actually going to get the number of sales that they would like to get? And are they going to go as quickly as they would hope, or will people revert to another brand that has already been established, like the KTM's and the BMWs and such like that? So I, I think they're going to sell, but I don't know if it's going to be as hot as they would like it to be. I think it's going to be, I think year two or year three that we're going to see a spike in the Harley Davidson Pan America sales, assuming that it lives up to what they have been promoting.
Interesting. Yeah, see, I kind of saw it the other way, that I think year one it's going to sell out, and then they're going to produce more in year two, three, and so on and so forth. But I think it's going to more or less stagnate. I think those that want it are going to buy it in year one, and it's going to be roughly the same market of people each year that are going to continue to buy it. I don't think you're going to find that. That's my prediction is they're going to do really well when they release it because of the excitement and hype and the fact that nobody's got really a big V-twin Harley type adventure bike, so it sounds cool and different. So they're going to sell it, and then that same number per year roughly is going to be what it sits at. I think it'll be a bike that has its market and sits at its market. That's kind of what Harley does, and I hate to say that in a negative way that it's coming out, but they have a bike that they know what they have, and they know who buys it, and they sell to those people. And I think the adventure bike that they're putting out, the Pan America, is going to be a similar game where the people that want it are going to buy it, and they're going to tell their friends that are the same people that want it, and they're going to buy it the next year, and so on and so forth. But I don't think it's necessarily going to rush and wave over the market to where every year they're going to have growth increases in some great rate.
No, I think that you're going to have growth increases over the first couple of years. You're going to find a peak, and then it's going to start dropping. Now, I don't know how quickly those rates are going to be or how extreme those volumes will be, but I anticipate that's my prediction. And I know it's a couple years out for some of that, but I think we'll have a good feel at the end of this year as to how well it's going to do and how people have been perceiving and reviewing its performance in comparison to other top name brands that it's kind of competing with in a lot of ways.
Sure. No, and I think that's kind of the underlying part of my prediction here is that unlike, the live wire, where we know that they've sold a handful of them, but I've never seen one on the road, quite frankly. I think we're going to see that people that buy the Pan America ride them, and maybe just as much as they ride their Harley. So there's a kind of a big gap in Harley riders, where some that ride hundreds of thousands of miles a year, and there's some that ride once a year. But I think we're going to see the Pan America on the road.
Okay, yeah, no, I think you're right. I'll say that you're going to be right there. I'm curious how well it does, and I think that's kind of where we're differing a little bit here, but not by much.
I also, kind of getting into new bikes for the year, I also think we're going to see the Trident take a good chunk of that mid-class market. The more I've read reviews on that, the more people that get on it and ride it, which is still a pretty limited number. They don't have demo bikes going around or the opportunity to really go to your dealer and test them, even for us or other reviewers quite yet. But there have been a handful of people that have been either invited or live in England, where they do have a couple of loaner bikes for the media. And they have let a few people ride them, and those reviews are excellent. I mean, it seems like the one complaint I hear with the Yamaha 7 and 900s or a similar class when it comes to Kawi, Suzuki, or Honda is the throttle control, right? The controllability of these mid-range bikes, just due to the low cost, trying to keep it in a very accessible price range. On a twin, which is usually that 700 roughly sized bike, you get pretty uncontrollable throttle, and that maybe that's extreme. I've ridden some bikes that have crazy throttle control, and I really don't think they're as bad as the media would lead them to believe. A little practice with wrist control, and they're really not like they're uncontrollable. But you end up with bikes that are a little harder to tame. And that Trident, from what I understand in every review, is incredibly easy to control. So I think we're going to see that triple kind of moves the needle to Triumph's favor for the kind of that 600 to 800 cc bike area.
Right, because what is the Street Triple? What is it rated at?
So Street Triple's a 675. That's basically the same engine. So the Trident has the same engine, slightly detuned and more controllable. They've basically refined my bike's engine into a more modern frame with lower weight, better electronics, a nice TFT display. They've taken a tried and true Street Triple that's been around since, '08 with incredible reliability, and they've thrown it into a modern system. So I think it's going to do well.
So are we seeing, what I'm getting at, the reason why I asked this is because you have this new Trident 660, and let's say it does well, but it's, never enough power for people, right? So then the next thing is, what's next? What's Triumph going to do? Maybe they won't do anything, but are they transitioning from the Street Triple, Speed Triple nomenclature to Trident? And are we going to see like a Trident, maybe 900, that comes out and is released as a 2022 model at the end of the year?
So obviously they still have the Street Triple, which is now a 765. It's a slightly larger engine, different compatibility with regards to the frame and everything. Right? They updated 2 years ago. I guess it's 3 years ago when it was released, but I think 2-year model year. The Street Triple to be a much faster bike. But there have been spy shots already in England of a what they believe to be 1150 roughly cc Speed Triple replacement. So there's a big triple floating around in a very sport bike body. If you look online, I think most of the places I've seen call it the Speed Triple. But there is definitely something in the works right now for a large cc triple to replace that big bike market for, a Street Fighter type bike, right? To go fight with the Diavel or some of these other Ducatis, really the only other group making these hot 1000cc street burners, right? These bikes that are made to just terrorize the streets. And quite frankly, the speed triple's been behind that for a number of years in the similar way that the street triple's been around forever without change. Speed triple's in that same boat. So the fact that they're thinking of updating that really goes into what you're saying, but I like your prediction, or maybe your allusion to a prediction, that they may not be the speed triple, right? Are they going to call it the Trident 1150?
Yeah, I anticipate that they're going to keep on playing off of this new naming scheme. I don't know if it will be Trident or not, but I would not be surprised, and I will predict that we're going to either see a larger Trident or that we're going to start seeing the naming of their motorcycles changing over the next couple years. Potentially at the end of this year, we could see a little bit of a glimpse of what that may be. I guess speaking to the fact, as you've stated and alluded to, that it hasn't changed significantly and it's been around for quite a while. And I think that the name matters, and I guess it has a reputation, but I don't think that's as important as just the performance and continued performance in that being updated in itself. And then you can give it any name you want, especially if it has some heritage at all with the name brand. Now, I don't know a lot of Triumph. I don't know if there's anything from the past. I don't know if Trident was a smaller bike, and then if they named a little bit larger bike in the past, Hercules. I don't know. But what would that be? And I guess that'd be interesting for me to research. But that would be my prediction, that we're going to see an extension, either an extension of the Trident name into larger CC motorcycles, or that there's going to be a name change on the street or speed triples.
That's a pretty interesting comment. Obviously with the exception of the existing speed triple or street triple, and then the only one that's really updated that doesn't have a historical name is the Rocket 3, and I don't know what else you'd call a bike of that stature. So, that one's hard to find a classic bike that, is also larger than a Honda Civic engine. So that one sits in its own class, so I understand having its own new modern nomenclature, but that's an interesting point. They've really gone back in almost every model, the Tiger, the Bonneville, the Trident, and the Daytona, to classic names. So I could see that. I like it. I think you're onto something there. I know it's very Triumph specific. Now we're getting hyper specific in our predictions, but I think that's a good point.
Well, we got to have something to complain and poke at each other about at the end of 2021. So I'm okay with it. Really, I got to make some bold ones, and I got to kind of back it up to some extent, so that way we have something to talk about, people to laugh at us about for the next, 11 months.
Oh, I think they'll have plenty to laugh at.
Yeah, probably. So what do you think about Kawasaki? Are we going to see some sort of KLR 650, KLX 650? Let's say it's KLX 650. I don't believe that there's anything released as of yet, but there's been a lot of rumors. Do you anticipate, with all of this hype still centered around adventure motorcycles, that we're going to be seeing a reveal of a new adventure motorcycle for Kawasaki?
I think we will. There's already been some discussion in the specifically non-U.S. markets, in basically the Asian markets, that there's going to be basically a new version of the KLR 650. It does look a little more Versus-like with the monoshock and everything kind of going on there based on the images I've seen. But I think there will be a replacement for that. I think it will be likely two variants. It won't be the KLR, right? Or maybe it will. Maybe it'll be the KLR and the KLX, but it'll be the same engine, same motor plant, same power plant, sorry. On those, that will then function as kind of a road-worthy bike, or a more road-oriented bike versus a more off-road oriented bike. So I think this year we will see release information. I'm really surprised. I think they were planning to originally talk about it in November of last year, if I remember correctly on my timing.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
I'm surprised we haven't, because not releasing it this year is really missing the mark when you've got the new Tenere 700, when you've got Honda making a new CB 500X and a 750. You've got these bikes that are kind of in this only okay adventure, but pretty good road bikes. touring adventure midweight bikes that are really popping up to make a difference. And Cowie is really the only one not playing that game right now.
Yeah, it is surprising that they're not in it, but I think that I'm going to go on a limb and I'm going to say if it's going to come out this year, if they're going to reveal it, that it's going to be at a time that it emboldens its hype in such a way that people are, when they're getting into the market starting in March, April, whenever that may be, that's going to be the thing that they're going to go and check out. So everybody's gone and they've released and they told everybody it was coming and maybe it's out on the floors. I'm saying that if Kawasaki's going to do it, and I think that they absolutely need to get in the game and they need to get in it quickly, that you can't stand too far away from things when things take off, when the market is in the groove in a certain segment. That is going to take place in March. Otherwise, you're right. I think that it'll be in later on in the year, maybe for 2022. But there was other motorcycles that they were talking about revealing, and they didn't. So for whatever reason, they held off. I can only imagine that it's for um, marketing publicity and trying to time it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of the game, and quite frankly, we follow the market fairly well. We really try to stay up on this stuff, and that's one thing I still can't really. My head, for some reason, I can't wrap around when each manufacturer releases their bikes. Now it's all generally in the winter, between fall, winter, and spring. Generally, right? You want to get it out before summer, and that makes sense to me. But the timing specifics when each group, Harley coming out in February, that's kind of strange. Most manufacturers are, November to get everybody hyped up and putting deposits on their bikes for Christmas. You get kind of a lot of that, and everybody does it their own time. Cowie was planning November. March seems super late, especially for adventure bikes. The second the snow melts, people are out in the mud, man. If you want a bike that's going to be an off-road-ish bike in any way, that just seems late to me. So I fear that Cowie's not going to do anything until, summer of 2021, and they're going to tell us about it, and it's going to be something we can buy for fall. It won't be available for the spring. It'll be a fall release, which is a little different, but
Yeah,
they
I
got
don't
to do
think it
something.
helps them at all when everybody's getting ready and saving up and potentially tax returns coming back and everything else. I mean, they did release in November, to your point, several motorcycles. I think it was 5 motorcycles, 6. Maybe they dropped a couple of those. I can't remember specifically without looking it up right now. But I know that a couple of them were like the KLX 300 and the Supermoto. So, I mean, they did bring out something that kind of lends itself towards the that market, but not where it needs to be. Not to replace what was lost out of their lineup.
Now, to kind of follow along with this discussion, I know I said it last year, and I totally missed the mark. Granted, I'm calling 2020 a buy year because with
Whatever. You
everything,
can't just call 2020 a buy year and play yourself off. Come on.
but I mean to that point, I'm going to go ahead and say that I think the 3 to 600 cc adventure bikes and or street bikes, these naked street bikes, that these middleweight bikes are going to take over. I think a lot of people want a dual sport that's a little more roadworthy, um, and in the smaller CC, right? Because you can get a more roadworthy bike that still has better off-road chops when it's a little lighter weight. So I think that you see that a lot of manufacturers, now it comes with going European EPA ratings and all of this, are going to these water cooled and kind of moving up in technology and emission standards, are going slightly larger to make up for the horsepower losses, but probably lighter in their actual manufacturing due to tolerance and material choices. So I think we're going to see midweight bikes continue to grow and take over. I think this will be the year that we see a lot more people on the sub 1000 cc motorcycles running around town, both in touring as well as day-to-day riding.
Well, you threw in 3 to 600. I think that 3 is on the small side. I'm gonna say I just don't know. It seems like 5 to 900 seems to be about midweight. And I know I just threw out a number that doesn't have a lot of bikes in it for the 500, but still maybe we can talk 450 and up, but as the middleweight, and it really is more, I guess, to your point, the 600 to 900, I'd say at least if we're going to talk middleweight, that's middleweight to me. Anything below that is really a small displacement bike. And I just don't see, other than just a dedicated off road motorcycle or something that you're truly going to just go and do trail riding and maybe a little bit of on road, like to get from one trail to the next. I don't see that doing really well when a lot of people are still working from home. And so this goes back to my initial prediction for 2021, stating that there's not going to be a large volume of still. I think the people that are going to be buying are going to be buying the larger displacement. I'd say the top end of the mid to the larger displacement bikes, because the intent is to get out and go somewhere, not to just go to the grocery store, not to go to work, not to go to your buddies, although that can all be done on a larger displacement bike, but not as nimbly, I guess, right, if you want to talk about it in those terms. But that those are the ones that I think are going to potentially sell. And unfortunately, people are going to want to be paying for something that's in that larger displacement category that they can ride on comfortably for long trips. But they're going to want to pay the mid-range bike prices. And so I think that you're still going to see, like I said, the used bike market is going to do really well for those larger displacement bikes because of what I've stated, as well as seeing that some of the Japanese and non-American motorcycles selling potentially fairly well in the larger displacement categories.
Yeah, I think it's going to be sub 1,000 is the hot spot. I don't think we're going to see too many. Maybe in the used market, that the used market is kind of runs all over. It runs the gamut pretty hard on all the displacements. It's really what's reliable and what is talked about. So you're still going to see used GS 1200s all over the place selling like hotcakes. You're going to see the bigger Gold Wings and some of these big touring bikes that have renowned reliability still sell really well. But I think when it comes to lightly used and new bikes, I think we're going to see a lot of the kind of the point, the middle range kind of 6 to 900 cc bikes selling a lot more. I think people are migrating to that. I think people are finding that lower weight is beneficial. They get better mileage. The maintenance is lower. Your ability to control it is generally a little higher. You can have a little more fun in the corners. Really, there's very little missing on a modern, let's just hit the middle mark there, right? A modern 750cc bike. There's little that you need more than that.
On the longer trips. They don't have as much capacity. And people are wanting to get out. You have to think they've been stuck at home with their families, their kids, their wives, whatever it may be, for the last 9 months. The last thing they want to do is do a short commute uptown and around and go down a twisty road and come back that night. They're wanting to go somewhere and they're wanting to get out. And as soon as that market, that trend, that thought of going somewhere comes up, bigger bike makes sense to them. That's where they make the purchase.
No, but I think the logicality of what you're saying, or the logic, I don't think logicality is a word.
You can call it a word today. We'll add it to the dictionary.
The logic of what you're saying isn't there, that a modern 750cc bike. Now, if we're talking, older used market, sure, but a modern 750cc bike with 6 gears and water cooling and the fine-tuned, transmission that it has, you can do anything and everything with minimal exception as a 1200cc bike or a 1600cc bike. You really are not limited on these modern bikes based on how they're set up with engine rev range and transmission, such that it'll go as fast as you can legally go and then some anywhere.
On paper, it looks great, but what I'm saying is those bikes are shorter, they're smaller. In general, they don't ride the same way as a large bike as far as a longer ride or a traveling trip across the U.S. or across, some region of the U.S. That's going to be a lot better for them. They're going to see that when they get on the bike, they hit the highway, and how that actually handles, and being able to see themselves do that and actually enjoy it.
I agree with you. For the type of rider that's just going to hit the highway and ride the interstate across the country or across Europe or wherever you're going, across Australia, the big displacement cruiser type bike or touring type bike, if we're talking the Star Eluder or the Goldwing or the big Harleys or Indians, right? Those bikes are still by far, if you're just going straight line, minimal curves, I agree. There's no substitute. Those big cushy lounge cushion couches with two wheels are the way to go. But if you're going back roads to experience, these small towns and take the quote unquote motorcycle roads, if you're looking at a Butler map or whatever, you lose nothing on a modern 700cc bike. I mean, the seat on the new Trident is just crazy comfortable.
No, there's no storage. Don't even throw that into the mix. You can't throw this. I like the looks of the Trident 660, but it is small. You look at a picture of it next to any other bike, it is tiny. There is no space to actually go on a trip. There isn't any space. It is meant for the weekend warrior, go out, come back in, maybe do something lightly, stay at an Airbnb while you're there, maybe, but not being able to go on a week or more trip. No.
It is not much different than the bike I'm riding, right? Than the Street Triple, and that's perfectly capable of everything you just said that it's not meant to do.
Right, and you're finding its shortfalls, though. We can't blindside ourselves to the truth of the matter is that you can make it work, but you've had to custom manufacture things to make that work as well. And the seat is not comfortable, and you're still fighting with that. And those are two big things that usually when you go to the right style, the right bike that's a little bit larger, you get. It is part of the experience.
That's fair. But what I'm expressing is these newer bikes have better seats and have more of that. Now I agree, the luggage capacity on my bike, the only way to do it with style was to make it myself. They make luggage for my bike. I just think it's ugly and I wouldn't do it because looking good is half the fun. But when it comes to these older bikes, you have to go with the right tool for the right job because they weren't as much of a multi-tool as these newer mid-range bikes are.
Yeah.
We'll see. 2021.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I get it, and you can use a bike way beyond what it was intended, especially within the mid-range market. You can make that work. I'm just saying that when people really start thinking about it, the practicality of buying a motorcycle and doing what they're wanting to do this year, that I think that kind of changes the game, and that's kind of a mindset that we haven't really had, at least in the last couple decades, or at least maybe over a decade ago. That's where the mentality came from. But I think we've got some pretty good predictions here. I don't know. Did you have anything else that was pressing that you wanted to try to get me to slip on?
Yes, one big prediction.
Oh.
I predict that this year I get to see all the things in California that I haven't seen in the past on two wheels.
Well, you already planned this. Humbly calling this the best California trip ever, I think, if I remember correctly.
Yeah. I made mention of that in the message out to kind of kick off the plan, or I guess planning's already been done, but kick off the initial leadership group here to get the ride going, understand our initial numbers, and start fine-tuning it. But yeah, I think that, I humbly call it the best California ride ever. So
I was just kind of surprised. And correct me if I'm wrong. I know I've sat in on some of these. I haven't been able to attend one, and I'd really like to do it this year. Maybe I'll steal my dad's bike if I don't have a larger bike by then.
Nice.
But if in the past, I thought that you incorporated the group a little bit more. I'm not saying that what you did was wrong or bad by any means. You've already kind of laid it out. You've kind of got an idea. We haven't seen all of the details, but at least the highlights that you've put together, which I think is awesome. But in the past, have you incorporated more input from everyone?
So this is year 5. I've been putting these on for 5 years, and year 1, I basically planned the whole thing. Year 2, I basically planned the whole thing, and in the same way that this is. So I shouldn't say that. There's a lot of people that go into supporting it. Dennis is a huge help. I know we all know Dennis, but he's been one of my go-to for options and ideas. He's been to a lot of these places, and if he hasn't, he does, as much research as I do, if not more, on each of these locations in his free time. So Dennis is a really good resource. By name, I'll go ahead and say that just because of how good of a resource he's been. But and others, I'll ask general opinions. Last couple of years, you're right, it's been a lot more of a collaborative process, and I find that the last 3 years of planning while doing that have really caused everything to take a lot longer and to go back and forth. And in the end, you kind of get who wants to go anyway. It doesn't really make a difference. And so, having done this now for 5 years, I've come to the realization that setting it up, planning the route, getting everything lined up to the point where once we start buckling down numbers, we can then establish cities that we're going to stay each night. And those that want to can book their own accommodations, and or we can set up campsites or whatever we need to. So I've found that making the big picture plan, and even a lot more granular than that, and kind of coming into even daily specific ride locations is really the right way to go when we get into the size groups we've had as this has grown into what it is.
Right. Well, you can't accommodate for everybody. I know that some people have tagged on, kind of wanted to do their own little thing, done offshoots, and people can if they really want to do that.
Yep.
But I can imagine that a lot of people just want to get on the bike and just go, and they don't want to have to think about it. They're just ready to get out of the house and go on a trip. So I can see how that would be beneficial for them, having it already planned out and just getting to hear about it and get excited about it and get together, I guess, with the group, which is a little bit different over the last couple of years as it has been in the past.
I've been really interested. I spent a lot of time over the last few months really getting this ready and dialed in, and kind of understanding, going through a number of different options, right? You start with kind of where's the rough area you want to go. Then you start to boil those top 3 or 4 down to what could you actually do in those areas. And then kind of got to where I found what I want to do here, and then decided to add a couple days for extra offshoots that look like places I've never seen and I'd like to do. And you just you boil it down a little more and a little more till you get there. But that's kind of, I think, long term, it would be really fun to set up some rallies. And unfortunately, a rally is kind of not the right word, because I'm not the kind of person that goes to a central location and does 5 loops and goes home. I like to keep moving to a different location most nights. But set up some form of ride that could be more public, with nightly stays for the group, right? Everybody can ride at their own pace, and everybody shows up to the same party every night so that we can all enjoy discussing that route together. Everybody kind of buddies up and then meets together at the end. So that's kind of a long-term goal. Again, this is year 5, so I'm still fine-tuning the process, but that's kind of where this idea came from, or not idea, but this planning technique is coming from, is understanding how to get set up in such a way that this can be an option, and you can either decide to go or not. Because I found the people with the most input sometimes are the people that aren't going to show up anyway. And catering to that is really frustrating when, a month in advance, you can't get somebody to buckle down and they don't come anyway. So, I say that, that's probably why I throw Dennis's name out there, is because he's definitely not that kind. I could have probably picked anywhere and he'd probably come along because he just wants to ride.
Right.
That dude loves motorcycles, and he'll go anywhere if it's with a group of buddies. So that's an easy choice, and his opinions are also excellent and super valuable in this planning. But there's others that want to get really involved and then change the plans and then don't come anyway, which is frustrating. So it's time to buckle it in, and we can make specific plans if people want to make a little offshoot to location X, Y, or Z that's basically en route. Then let's do it. But this is the main plan.
Right. And I guess I know that we're closing in on an hour, but I have a couple points that I want to make. One thing is we've still got COVID going on. And I know I'm not trying to pound this, I'm not trying to remind people this, but for you, planning a trip right now, you stated absolutely nothing about going into the hornet's nest, if you will, and I'll call that California, regarding just concerns, issues, closures, whatever it may be. Now, we do have that in Oregon as well and in Washington, so it's not too far-fetched. But I'm stating this not just for your knowledge and awareness, but for other listeners. What are you planning to do to mitigate, to go around, to be in alignment with where we are at that time?
So a lot of that is actually making the, because like I said, I've been doing this for a couple months to get this year's ready because I'm ready for another big trip. So this is a 7-day, 6-night adventure here. Basically that sees everything. It hits every major motorcycle road in California, whether you're talking about Butler maps or online reviews or whatever. Basically every major road that people want to do by motorcycle is on this route in a 7-day trip, as well as obviously big landmarks that are worth seeing anyway. And so that makes it twice as hard because I shouldn't say you're because it's me going through and trying to figure out accommodations that will be open, the best accommodation given the fact that everything's open. And then as well, what's a backup, right? If things go south, where can we go that we can still get accommodations that meet state regulations? And I'm making the assumption that it won't be worse than it has been over the last month. We've kind of all, you just mentioned it, but in the Northwest and California, rebuckled down in the last month to the point of things are basically closed in most cases. And so I'm making the assumption that it won't get worse than that by June, July, August, and some of the planning dates. We're still buckling down the exact time frame, but that requires me to go through and plan 2-3 options per day for accommodations, for food, and for stops. Right? If a state park or somewhere we want to go is closed, then what's Plan B for that day?
Right.
Or Plan C in some cases, right?
No, and I know these are things that you're kind of thinking through. It just wasn't in the announcement that was to a few of us. There wasn't a lot of statements about that, so I'm sure it's going to come up. I know that you've planned it out, but I think it's important for listeners that may be getting ready to go out to kind of have that in their back pocket of different things that they can do, whether it be tenting or I can't remember the name of the app, but I thought there was one where you could actually see people in an area and they would act. It was like some sort of an app that showed you people that were willing to have you come and stay at their house almost for free. And maybe they'd let you camp in their backyard. Maybe that's your back pocket. I don't know. Do you remember what the name of that is since I'm talking about it?
So the big one right now, I think, is Bunka Biker,
Okay.
BAB. They do a really good job, both on their website. I think it's just bunkabiker.com and on Facebook. But they do a pretty good job of a community based. I mean, riders helping other riders find somewhere to stay.
Right. Okay. And the last thing that I had, we may find is our ending transition, and you may find that it works out well for that. But the last thing I wanted to bring up for all those people that live in California is Addison's really made a pretty big claim. I mean, not only the best California ride ever is the title, but he stated within it that all the best motorcycle roads in California. And so I want to hear from everybody that lives in California what the best roads are and what can't be missed. And I want to see if it matches Edison's list, and we'll go from there.
I agree. I love it. I'm into that. That was going to be my last, or not that statement, but a similar statement was going to be my last statement. So let us know. Obviously SLAKR moto@gmail.com. You can just call us or contact us directly. You can always go to Facebook, leave a message, and or slackermoto.com and leave us a note there. But let us know, specifically our listeners in California, and I know there's a lot of you. Let us know what the best roads are. And as the dates come in, right now we're kind of looking at a few. Once we buckle down a date, let us know if you're interested in joining us, even if it's just for a day or two. You're more than welcome to join and come through a loop. We'd love to have as many listeners as we can. Join in for a little bit of the ride, if not the whole ride, if you can. But we're starting from the Portland area, so if you're in California, that's hard to do. But if you're in Oregon and you can take 7 days, by all means, come join us for the whole thing. But we are, I'm interested to see that. If you've got rides that, what is your best ride, right? What's the best road you can hit? Send it to us. Let us know. And Brad's going to hold me accountable when we have some of our final planning days as to whether those rides made it to the list.
Absolutely. Got to keep you on your toes. Until next time, ride on.